Hey everybody, Misty Williams here, your host for Your Best Sleep Ever and founder of Healing Rosie. And this next conversation is going to be bananas. I'm super stoked to have Dr. Marny with us to talk about how to detox our homes. But this is going to be a different kind of detox conversation than I've had anywhere else on Your Best Sleep Ever, because we're going to go deeper and talk about our building materials. We're going to talk about off-gassing and what is off-gassing in our homes, how long things off-gas. We're going to try to get really practical about what we need to replace in our homes and how we can make our homes safer and cleaner and less toxic. We're going to go into some strategies that not a lot of people know about. And that's super exciting for me because obviously I'm really committed with my own health to doing everything I can to clean up my environment and give my body the best chance at being the best version of itself. And this is a just totally important part of the entire conversation. And it's very fortuitous that we have Dr. Marny with us. I actually found her in a conversation on Facebook on somebody else's thread about something totally different. And she was talking about some of her expertise and it just like lit me all up. And I reached out and asked her if she could join us. So I think that God and the angels are conspiring on our behalf to make sure we have this information. So Dr. Marny Turvill spent 16 years as a conventional pediatrician before her own serious illness forced her out of medicine completely. Her illness was multiple chemical sensitivity, so she learned a lot more than she ever wanted about chemicals and consumer products and how toxic they are to the human brain and body. When she left medicine, Dr. Marny opened a local retail store specializing in air filters, water filters, and chemical-free products, including everything from personal care to cleaning products to paint and carpet and mattresses. She and her family suffered for 10 years before she discovered the tools of neuroscience and functional medicine that ultimately allowed her to fully recover. And now she's healthier than she was 30 years ago. For the last 7 years, she's had her own functional medicine and brain retraining practice outside the pillbox, just outside of Chicago, where she helps adults and children recover from mystery symptoms and chronic illnesses. Welcome, Dr. Marny.
Thank you. This is exciting, this fortuitous meeting of ours.
It is so exciting. I have just been tickled pink about it. And actually, I told a couple of the people on my team that we were having this conversation. It's so intriguing. And I'm stoked for us to dive in, and we're going to try to keep this within the allotted time. But I was telling you before we started that this could easily be a 2 or 3 hour conversation. So we're going to talk fast and try to get to the good stuff and give people enough that they can take some good action in their homes. So multiple chemical sensitivity. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about your diagnosis and what you were struggling from? Because I understand that had a pretty significant impact on your sleep.
It had a significant impact on my sleep and every other aspect of my life. Yeah, and I hope, it's my dearest hope that most of the listeners have not heard of multiple chemical sensitivity, because it's a really nasty, debilitating condition. It's kind of the dastardly combination of chronic chemical toxicity and the damage that does to the body, plus post-traumatic stress disorder with chemicals as the trigger. So you become, your body is not only overloaded and damaged by chemicals, either because of a big exposure or chronic ongoing exposures and poor detox mechanisms, but also you become hypervigilant to chemicals, which is predominantly to smell. So you can smell things a mile away that nobody else can smell. So just the arguments with people about what's present and what's not present are incredibly difficult. But you become hypervigilant and therefore hyperreactive. So every time you smell a chemical, you have a big stress reaction. And in some people, that goes straight into a mild panic attack. So it's a huge increase in stress and the frequency and intensity of your fight or flight reaction, as well as an overload of toxic chemicals. So it's quite a combination. And most people end up becoming unable to work because they can't tolerate being in public buildings. They have to totally overhaul their homes, but then not working, they may end up actually homeless, on disability, and they don't have the means by which to get better. So I hope that people have not heard about it. But if they have heard about it, or if they are experiencing it, I am living proof that you can recover fully. And one of the saddest things to me about multiple chemical sensitivity is there's so much misinformation about it. Doctors know next to nothing about it for the most part. I certainly had never heard of it before I had it. And they think there's nothing that can be done, which is totally not true. You get better by detoxifying as well as by retraining your brain, very active techniques to build new neural pathways so that you're not hypervigilant and hyperreactive to the chemicals. It's a two-pronged recovery. You can't just do one or the other. You have to do both. That's a big deal. I've started learning useful techniques for recovering just over 8 years ago. So it's been 8 years. I was 10 years where I had no help and was just getting worse. And then 8 years where I've really regained my health way beyond prior to the onset of that illness.
So how did all of that affect your sleep? What did that look like for you?
Sleep for me was similar to what you might see for anyone who has chemical toxicity buildup, which is truly everybody has it to some degree.
Totally.
We are all being harmed by it. And anyone who has trouble turning off their thoughts, or if you have anxiety. So I had trouble falling asleep. I couldn't turn my mind off. I was what you may have heard, or people may have heard, wired but tired. Like I was exhausted, but I was like, couldn't tone it down to sleep.
Yeah.
And I would wake up in the night and my thoughts would be racing immediately, so that it was hard to go back to sleep. And I didn't realize it until I was starting to get effective treatment and this resolved, but I wasn't dreaming. So I wasn't getting into those deeper states of sleep for probably close to the full 10 years. I really don't know. But so, I was exhausted during the day, and it all just, everything snowballs. Everything with health snowballs.
Totally. That's been my experience.
It all interacts and becomes a vicious cycle.
So one of the things that that I'm really resonating with on what you're saying so far is just that we're all toxic. It took me in 2011 when I had my surgery, my health journey started, and I was beating my head against the wall trying to get doctors to help me, and everyone was telling me my labs are fine and everything was normal, and I'm like, I'm not fine and things aren't normal. I finally was able to find yes, right? Yeah. I finally was able to find some doctors to help me with thyroid support and hormone support, but that's not been enough. I found that over time I need more. And a couple of years ago, I started a heavy metal detox, and doing this deep detoxing has literally changed my life. First of all, we get terrible cedar fever here in Austin. Like the cedar trees bloom and everyone is like just wanting to die. There are people that leave town for months when the cedar's blooming because it's so debilitating and it creates infections a lot of times, turns into bronchitis. It's awful. We're in the middle of it right now. My friends are talking about their pains with cedar. I have none. And I know that's because of detoxification. Absolutely. So I had no idea how important detoxification was. And the way that people talked about a detox in my world, pre 2017, 18 was I'm going to do a cleanse. I'm going to do a detox. And now I know that those things that I was doing and that I was hearing about my friends were doing were barely even scratching the surface. I mean, they were not going near deep enough to really move the needle. And I would imagine with something like multiple chemical sensitivity, you probably had a pretty high toxic load so that your immune system just couldn't deal with anything new at all that was like coming into the body. And of course, when we get to that point, all of us are experiencing really trashed sleep. So I'm really fascinated by the trajectory that your life took in response to what was happening to you. You actually had a store for a while. And I mentioned it in the intro where you helped people with their homes. And I kind of want to just jump into this whole conversation of the toxins in our homes. And could you start by helping us understand how toxins and our sleep are connected together?
I can. There are, way more ways than we can discuss in this short thing about how toxins and sleep are connected. it's really would be easier to talk about how they're not connected.
Right.
But let's just start with a few obvious examples. So, and of course, we're talking specifically about toxins in the home, like building products and furniture and decorating products, but this is all forms of toxins, regardless of where you pick them up. So all chemicals damage the mitochondria, which are the energy producing factories in our cells, right? And they control our rate of metabolism. They also control our rate of detoxification, as well as our physical and mental energy, largely, not entirely, but largely. So, and when we have less energy, we're more sluggish. So we're not exercising because we can't haul ourselves off the couch to the gym. Mm-hmm. Exercise, as you know, is a key to good sleep. It's also a key to detoxifying with the sweating involved. So that's one way. Another way is that the chemicals directly damage cells in different tissues or in all tissues, depending on the chemical. For the most part, they're pretty indiscriminate. And that cellular damage leads to inflammation. Most people are aware that inflammation is what causes pain. So whether it's a headache or muscle aches, fibromyalgia, or less intense muscle aches, or arthritis type pains, those are all from inflammation. So the more toxic you are from chemicals, the more inflammation you're going to have, the more pain you're going to have. We all know how hard it is to sleep when you have any degree of pain. Pain mm-hmm. sensations are perceived at a higher level when you're trying to sleep. I don't think they're actually higher, although I don't have proof of that. I think it's just that you're in a dark room and there's nothing to distract you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Another thing is stress. So our stress is generally increased now by our lifestyles, the global economy and all the interconnectedness and the fast pace of life, and families with, blended families, and all the running around that people do now that is more than 20 years ago, more than 40 years ago, more than 60 years ago. Our stress is increased generally, which means our cortisol levels are up more often and for longer time periods. Cortisol is one of the hormones that varies throughout the day. People may be aware it's high in the morning to wake us up, and then it goes down during the day to allow us to be ready to sleep at night. Well, when you're more stressed all the time, and especially if you're stressed in the evening, your cortisol levels are going to be high when you're supposed to be going to sleep, and that doesn't work very well. And our stress is not just that faster lifestyle. All the chemical exposures create stress for the body that produces cortisol. There's many components to stress beyond lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Hormones in general are disrupted. So thyroid and melatonin, which are also two big regulators of sleep, just get disrupted by chemical toxic burden, and the hormone receptors get damaged. So the hormones don't work as well. And then there's so many things, but the last one I'll mention is the more toxins we accumulate, and we all accumulate them, unless we're doing very active things to effectively detox. I've definitely reduced my load substantially, but if you're not consciously trying to detox and doing it well, you are accumulating. We get toxins in the brain, and that directly causes depression, and more importantly, in terms of sleep, is anxiety, because as soon as you're anxious and worried, you can't turn your mind off to settle down into sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And then all those things are causing less sleep and lower quality sleep. And then you're more stressed the next day. And we detoxify during sleep, predominantly during sleep, not during waking hours. And we do our body repairs during sleep predominantly. So if you're not sleeping as well, you're building up even more toxins because you're not detoxifying as well, and you're not repairing damage. So you're accelerating imbalances and things that are going to lead to various health problems.